doing this training is very critical, and don't compromise. It is always a tendency to compromise, say, cut down because we need more people on the field. You are having good people. That's more important. It is not the number, it's the quality of manpower. So I think this curriculum, this module of that, what I've suggested, if you can put into practice, it is not difficult. It's there in your mind, it's an attitude. If you make sure you implement this, I can guarantee you the results will be fantastic. But don't forget, the trainer has to be good quality.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Carbos, as we continue our mini-series on the topic of training for the automotive industry. This is part 2 of sales training. In case you've missed any previous episodes, I will be sharing the link below. Stick around till the end as we answer subscriber questions. And as always, for the latest and greatest on the automotive industry, subscribe, like, and ding that notification bell. Let's go. Good morning and welcome back.
Morning, Taj.
So, Commander, our question for today is, could you provide a brief overview of the key topics that should be covered in a training module to achieve best possible outcomes?
Right. I mentioned in my previous episode that everyone in the showroom or the sales division, starting from the security guard at the entrance to the CEO, must be put through some part of the training. I am not going to the specifics right now, so that everyone is trained to upskill themselves, so that finally we give the customer the best experience that he deserves. So that is one aspect. Now, we have so many different categories of people in a showroom, various people, whether it's core sales people, the support teams, the finance, the accessories, lots of people. But we are not going to deal with that. We will look at today only at the sales consultant. And sales consultant means I'm looking at people, freshers, whom we have selected, and this is the first-time job seekers who are coming into the system. And please remember that we are going to pay them a very good salary. We decided that in our episode earlier. We are going to make sure that we get the right caliber people. Now, it's important that the training is very robust. Now, I know many times the dealerships are very reluctant to put them through a long training because they feel it's a waste of time. They could be put through with senior guys who will guide them, etc. I think it is counterproductive. Let us not put guys, freshers with senior guys to learn from them, because you don't know what the quality of learning they will finally have. So I think they all must go through a very structured training. Now, the training, again, in terms of how much time, my estimation from what I'm going to be speaking on, it will take anything upwards of 2 months. Now, don't look at this 2 months as a waste of time, because if you put them through the right quality of training within this 2 months, I can assure you, whatever you may think you have deemed to have lost in this 2 months of training, much more will come back to you as returns in terms of sales performance. So let us not look at this as an expense of time or waste of time. Now, when newcomers join a dealership, I presume, which is the right practice to do, the first day is spent on taking them through the organization structure in terms of the company's value systems and the kind of HR practices, corporate culture, all this, and plus the onboarding procedures, etc. That is what normally the first day is done. So all of them go through that. So I'm not going to get into details of that. Now, the next part of the training, which is the real training going to start now, it might sort of amuse you. But from experience, what we started doing is we sent all these freshers, sales consultants who have not done any training now, they just done the first day of sort of onboarding procedures. They are sent to their respective showroom, whichever showroom they are supposed to be assigned to, consequent to the training. They go there for 2 days. Now, these 2 days, they are assigned to one senior sales consultant who is a good performer, whom we can take as an example. This fresher plays a buddy team, like a shadow team. Now, why do we do this? This we learned out of hard experience. We found that when you put fresh sales consultants into training, they go through the whole rigmarole of training, then they go back to the showroom. We found a good number of them leave the show after 2 or 3 days of work, sometimes even just 1 week and 10 days, etc. Now, why this happened is that consultants, when they come for training, they see a different world. It is nice, fun, training, learning stuff, etc., almost 2 months. And then suddenly you go to the showroom and they find a completely different experience. They find that they're not able to cope with the kind of demands of sales, and they leave. So there would be possibly a casualty, if you maybe 10%, maybe nothing. But the fact is, we want to break in these new guys to understand how the whole environment in a showroom is, what sales is all about. There is a kind of insight you get it. If some of them are not able to cope with it, let them leave, because we don't want our chickens in sales. This is a tough job. This needs tough mind, tough attitude, and tough able to take in a lot of pressures. So I think this 2 days is just the break-in period. That's the first part of the training. After the 2 days, they come back to the sales facility and the training starts. Now, if you look at what is a training that a fresh sales consultant requires, I would look at just 3 basic areas. The first is what I call soft skill training. Now, when you say soft skill training, it means the way he grooms himself, the way he carries himself, the way he dresses up, those sort of things is personal grooming. That is one part of it. The second part is how he speaks. How does he communicate with customers? How does he greet customers? How does he stand and talk to a customer? How does he sit and talk to a customer? How does he handle a telephone call? Now, these are all very important, because if a sales consultant is well trained in soft skills, his manners and etiquettes are top notch, then a prospective buyer, when he comes into the showroom, feels very happy to interact with him. Because remember, sales is not just a 5-minute activity. A prospect walks in, spends a considerable amount of time with a consultant. If he finds this guy is not the type that he would be expecting, not a person well-mannered, he's very ill-mannered, he's not dressed well, he looks very shabby, his appearance itself is putting off. Imagine a guy with, peacock-colored hair, etc. I don't think it sends a good message to a prospective buyer. And we see this, in the case of cabin crew of an airlines, how well they're dressed. Or if you go to big hotels, their front office staff are always well-groomed, well-attired, well-dressed. So I think we need to put people into the soft skills training, which must cover all aspects of customer interactions. So I think that will probably take about 2 days with a lot of practical. And I know for sure that people, after they watch this kind of training, and they, over a period of time, the skills will get better and better. It's not that after 2 days they're going to become a perfect fit. No, not necessarily. But I think they are given an insight into this, and they will be able to develop themselves after these 2 days. That's the first part of the training. The next part is on the product. What are the products that you sell? Now, you may have 10 different cars models to sell, but I don't think that we should be looking at training them on all those, because these are guys who probably don't have much exposure into cars, and the first time they're coming into a showroom or into a training session. So what I would suggest is that we look at some of the top selling. So if you look at Hyundai in India, I would pick up, say, the Creta as a model that sells. Must be trained on Creta. Maybe the i20. So you pick up 1, 2 or 3. I not say 1, 2 or 3. One SUV, one kind of hatchback to train them on. And you also have to train them on the competition model. So if you're looking at the Creta, what's the highest competition against the Creta? Maybe the Kia Seltos. So train them on that. Now, what are you going to train them on? It is not necessary to get into the nitty-gritties and detailed technical specification. No, I would think that a consultant should be able to explain to the customer the specifications which are mentioned in the e-catalog. It will talk about, say, the power, the torque, the suspension system, the ground clearance. These are things that you should be able to explain to the customer. Now, these are things that must be taught to the sales consultant in a way that he understands. And taking them to a car, showing them physically what the attributes are, what features are, makes a lot of difference. That's the reason why in my last episode I mentioned that the training facilities should be located at the 3S facility, so that you have access to the service center. You get a lot of synergy from the service team to explain things. So I think this whole thing about the product must be kept very simple, basic, but they must be able to understand it by actually seeing cars. Similarly, when you compare it with, say, the Creta versus the Seltos, do it with the Seltos. Get a Seltos along so that they see for themselves what a Seltos looks like. What are the comparison in between the two cars? Now, this is a training that will take some time. Now, I know for sure that this probably will be about a 10-day training on products with comparison. They're not going to become experts, but they have a holistic idea of how the features are, how to explain it. So I think, over a period of time, they'll get better. But they must go through this. This is not something that should be just left out and say they will learn on their own. No, they must be able to explain all the features which are specified in the e-catalog. Yes. That is as far as the product is concerned. Similarly, I said that comparison with the most close competition with the models. That is the second part, the product training. The third aspect that the consultant must be put on training is the processes. Now, every showroom, every dealership, every brand, they all have to processes are common, maybe with minor changes. But what are these processes? How is a customer explained a car, what they call a static demonstration of the car? This is the process. Customer comes in, you want to take him along to a car and explain the features of the car. There is a process to it. You can't be left to the whims and fancies of somebody to explain it. So that process should be told how to carry out a static demonstration of the car. How do you take the customer out on a test drive? What are the things that you need to explain to the customer when you go out and test it? How to carry out a good test drive where the cars are made sure, neat and clean. The consultant sits on with the driver, with the customer in the front as a co-driver. How he explains as he moves. All these processes must be ingrained into this concept. Then thinks about how do you accept a booking? What are the formalities to be completed when accepting booking for a car? How is the car sent for registration? How are the accessories fitted in a car? How is the process carried out? How is auto finance extended to the customer? How is the delivery process there? How is that post-delivery? What are the activities that you carry out? How do you keep in touch with customers? What kind of feedback you get? So all these different processes must be ingrained. Again, they're not going to become experts at the end of, this is going to take again about 10 days of training, because it's not just about telling them, you have to make them repeat it, demonstrate, etc., so that they have a fairly good knowledge about how the various processes. So these aspects of soft skill, product, and the process. Now, this is one which is done in the classroom, plus you can take them to the showroom when you do this demonstration, or to the service center, etc. This whole training will take about 6 weeks in my assessment, almost 6 weeks. After that, the next part is they go to the show. They are sent to their showroom, where they spend 2 weeks with a senior buddy. Now, why this 2 weeks is for them to put into practice all that they learn in terms of soft skills, in terms of product knowledge, in terms of the processes. They go with the senior guy in all activities that he carries. Now, 2 weeks may look very, very big. Well, I feel the longer the duration, the better they learn, because it is better to train them well and put them, to the battlefield, rather than, making them train half and then they go and they fail. So I think this 2 weeks is a real good time, but very important is selecting the right senior guys with whom these guys are assigned. That buddy must be really a good guy, a person who is passionate about teaching. A guy is a good example to learn for this youngster. So selecting the buddy is of extreme importance. Now, we used to even reward these buddies by saying that you carry out a good training, you will get a bonus. Why not? Because they spend a lot of time, maybe a little part of their time is spent maybe getting a new deal, maybe.
Yes.
But I think it is worthwhile to give them a bonus. It's just as a gratitude given to them when they get a buddy. So they're also happy to have a guy and teach them, and they take pride in the fact, okay, this guy I train is going to do well.
Yeah.
So this 2 weeks is a buddy time. At the end of these 2 weeks, they are now put through a test by the trainer, the team leader, and the sales manager. This is what I call a certification test, where you just check on all these attributes that we have tried to instill in him, whether it is in terms of soft skills, the product, the process. Put him through that in a very structured manner and see if you can't expect the guy to be outstanding because he's still a fresher. But I think if he has grasped things well, his understanding is good, fair enough. But it's not that you have to pass everybody. If you find he still needs a little more brushing up, maybe give him 1 more week, or tell him very clearly, 1 more week, that's it. You can't be, extending this indefinitely, but maybe 1 more week. So once he's certified, now you say this guy, he can now carry out sales or meeting customers independently. Now, I'm putting this with a little catch. Now, when I say independently, I don't mean he completely becomes independent and starts meeting customers. We have seen where sales consultant after certification go and meet customers without any hand-holding. I had very disastrous results, because we know there are some customers who can be very nasty. They don't care whether you are a fresher or you are an experienced guy.
True.
They will go hammer and tongs at this guy. Maybe, some of them even use very tough language. And there have been instances where the consultant has come back crying and says, I don't want to do sales anymore. I can't handle this. So I don't think we should do this, because again, I want to bring in a parallel to the armed forces. You see, when pilots are trained in flying, you always have an instructor with you. So after lots of flying hours with the instructor, you're supposed to do a solo flying. But that first solo flying is not that you're all alone. They won't send you alone, because imagine all your hours of flying with the instructor and suddenly you say, here's the aircraft, take it and fly. All of a sudden, then there is a fear in your mind. There's a kind of something lurks in your mind. So what they do is the first few solo flights, even though we call it solo flight, the instructor is there. But he says, controls are not mine, controls are yours. I'm only sitting at the back. But it's a moral support for this guy who's flying, saying, look, I got my instructor behind me. Yes. Something goes wrong, he will save me, or he will say the aircraft go wrong. I think it's a tremendous amount of confidence building. No, that instructor definitely has dual controls. It's not that he doesn't have dual controls, but he's not going to touch anything. If you do mistakes, he will watch and he'll say, look, you failed. You can go back to flying more. Yeah. So I think, that whole concept of, someone backing you up is very important. So I would just think that once a certification is over, the first 5 inquiries, now let me tell you, don't send this pressure outside to meet a customer. Insist on him meeting customers only within the premises of the show, because you send him out, he is very fresh. He can't handle situation and, in a customer's office or residence where so many questions will be asked. Confine him only to inquiries which are within the show. So I would think the first 5 inquiries, he should be assigned where he will have his team leader sitting with him. Not really doing all his work. Explain to the customer, he's a new colleague of mine. I'm just here to help him out in case there are some doubts that comes up. You sit and let him handle the customer. And wherever he falters or some question you're not able to answer what the customer asks and the team leader is able to answer that, help him out, his confidence goes up. And I can tell you one thing, that the moment this person, the second or the third inquiry, he closes the deal, he is completely a changed man. Completely changed, because his confidence shoots. He becomes, he feels, look, now I can handle it. Now we need to take him to that. It might look very cumbersome for team leaders. And I know that when we started practicing this, there are many cases where team leaders were very indifferent to this whole idea. So we had to force it down and say, this guy will not be given inquiries and you will not get another replacement. He has to do it with your help. So it also exposes the team leader if he is incompetent, because he's not able to, make this guy perform. So I think these 5 inquiries of where he is helped by his team leader is going to be the one which is going to change his consultant, make him into a professional. So I think 5 inquiries, out of which maybe 2 or 3 if he converts, I think it's all done for us. He is now ready to take on himself independently. Now, I will not say that's the end of the training for this guy. We will want to watch him for another 3 months. This is a 3 months of learning for him, where the trainer has to shadow him, watch him at handling customers, look at his soft skills, look at his product knowledge, look at his process handling, etc. If he finds any serious flaws, he can also take feedback from his team leader and salesman, put him through a refresher training. Because it is easier to correct the mistakes in the beginning rather than those mistakes becoming a permanent part of his understanding. Yes. So I think this correctional training that needs to be done, it's a good way. So I think for the next 3 months, even though he is independently handling inquiries, the trainer must get involved, evaluate his performance, look at his flaws, correct. Now, if you do this, now you have been for 2 months plus half a month, etc., doing all this 5 inquiries, plus another 3 months. Now, I know for sure, and I've seen this in my own experience, in 6 months' time, a good trainee sales consultant becomes an exceptional performer. 6 months. Now, imagine if you are not put him through this training and let him do on his own, the chances of him hitting that performance mark is extremely unlikely, unless he is a genius and is of a different kind. It doesn't happen. So you see that effort of this 6 months. You are getting benefits, and you're getting benefits in good measure. So doing this training is very critical, and don't compromise. It is always a tendency to compromise, say, cut down because we need more people on the field. You are having good people. That's more important. It is not the number, it's the quality of manpower. So I think this curriculum, this module of that, what I've suggested, if you can put into practice, it is not difficult. It's there in your mind. It's an attitude. If you make sure you implement this, I can guarantee you the results will be fantastic. But don't forget, the trainer has to be good quality. There is no compromise on the quality of trainer.
Right. And do you also think this will affect attrition?
Definitely, because you see, the moment we have seen this. In fact, I keep talking to people in the industry today. Anyone who has taken freshers and put them to good training. Now, I know for sure, whatever I explained, not many people will practice extensively to this level. But even if they do 60% of what I mentioned, the results are going to be very encouraging. The people don't leave because they actually start liking this whole process of selling cars, because They have been molded into it. They have been supported. They have mentored and groomed into it and are getting good results. The moment good results comes, the guy gets very hyped and he wants to stay on. Attrition never happened. Attrition happens when people find, of course, it's not only in terms of performance at job, but also in terms of environment, work environment. But more importantly is if a guy starts to do well, it's definitely going to bring down attrition.
And I think it also ties into the culture that we spoke about, creating a conducive work culture. I think this also is a very tremendous part of it.
I agree, because you see, if you look at these 5 inquiries that I said that the fresher must, have his team leader handholding, it's a great opportunity for bonding. He starts to look up to his team leader with a lot of respect and says, "This is a good leader. I mean, man supports me. Man has got me through this, taught me." That kind of relationship is very important. That bond is very important in any organization. So I think a good work environment definitely will create better results.
The other subscriber we have is Vignesh MB5289, and he has 2 questions for you. The first one is, how do we ingrain equal opportunity into the system?
Right. I think this is a very, very vexing question, because everyone gets affected in an organization where you don't have fair play or a fair playing field. And this happens in organizations which do not have a very structured HR manual or HR policies. Very, very important. Now, if you have to be fair with people and give everyone opportunity to grow on basis of merit, this must be defined in the HR manual. The policies must say, how are you going to evaluate each person, on what criteria? And that must be safe for everybody. And based on which, what is the kind of reward he gets? Is it in terms of salary increment, or is it in terms of promotion, etc.? This must be contained in the HR manual. This cannot be something that is at the whims of and fancies of people, because if that is done, there will never be fair play as far as the organization is concerned. Now, I would go one step further to say that even if you have an HR manual where all these are sort of structured and mentioned, this has to be driven by the developers, because very often these get violated because people want to play according to their interest. And this always comes, a lot of subjectivity comes into it. So the dealer principals must make sure that what is contained in the HR manual is complied with everyone, and there is no deviations from that.
And the second question from the same subscriber is how to build awareness of cost efficiency, economic behavior, profitability, and awareness of the gross profit and benchmarking.
Very pertinent question. I'm surprised someone is raising this, because I think fiscal awareness is something which is lacking in our industry. Every organization will have his finance heads, etc., who will work out their balance sheets and P&L statements, etc. But at the operational level, awareness is very limited. I would think it's almost absent, in the sense that if you have a service center or a showroom, whoever is heading that service center or the showroom must be aware of not only just the performance in terms of sales of cars or revenue earned, but it should be in terms of, are you profitable? That means the whole concept of a profit center is very important. Everyone should think that I am head of a profit center, and am I making money or am I losing money? Now, this is something which is very, very important, because if you can get people to understand how it is to be done, it will be very effective in terms of making the organization more profitable and more aware of if they're doing something wrong. In fact, we did this in our dealership, where every month we did it more for the service centers, where every month a P&L statement was generated by each service center, and in a particular format, which was set format, on which the service manager, along with their accounts team in the service center, fill up all the data, and that was discussed. And what it actually brought out was a kind of awareness in the service heads, saying, look, my service center is only making so much money where someone else is making more money. Why is that person making more money? And many times it is not only the generation of revenues, but also the expenses. And it creates a certain amount of, I would think, sensitivity towards how much money you're spending on certain heads. A very typical thing is that we found electricity bills were fluctuating like crazy in some service centers. Then they found that sometimes ACs are switched on and left on. There are equipment which are running auto, even whether it's not used. There are lights being kept on. There are so many things that unwanted stuff. So the managers got very sensitive about it. They got more aware of it, and they started controlling it. So much so that they were looking at it saying, this month if I spend so much on electricity, I will fix a benchmark and say next month I want to bring it down. Now this awareness was great, because when that happened, we found every service center was making better profit than they were making the previous month. So see, to make money is only two things. One is to increase the revenue, reduce expense. Because if your revenue comes down, the only other way is to reduce the expenses so that your profitability remains the same. So I think this is a very good thing if we can do it. But I really don't think how many service centers really practice this, because it is confined to just those finance teams sitting in the corporate office. I would think it's very important to create this awareness now. It will really work and make people more aware of how they're performing.
Absolutely. So there it is, everybody. To all the people listening, this was an exceptional podcast about training and what it can do for the automotive dealership. So stay tuned for more information like this, and keep watching, subscribe, like, and share. And we thank you again, Commander Kumar, for sharing such amazing information with us.
Thank you, Taj. Namaskar.